In 1953, the CIA initiated a clandestine program known as Project MKUltra. This program was a highly classified series of human experiments aimed at developing techniques and identifying drugs that could be utilized during interrogations to weaken individuals and extract confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Essentially, it was the CIA's mind control program. In this video, we will delve into one specific sub-operation of MKUltra, where the CIA hired prostitutes to lure men to certain CIA-controlled brothels so they can experiment on them by using drugs and sex. This is known as Operation Midnight Climax. Project MKUltra began on April 13, 1953 on the order of then CIA Director Allen Dulles. The program itself was led by a CIA chemist, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who was this enigmatic, powerful figure within CIA, deeply obsessed by the potential of drugs for interrogation, espionage, and covert operations. He strongly believed in the potential of mind control techniques to give the United States an advantage in the Cold War, and he was willing to explore any means necessary to achieve that goal. And that was essentially the whole aim of the MKUltra program, to develop mind-controlling drugs for use against America's enemies. Now, one of the drugs they wanted to experiment with was first made in 1938, just on the brink of World War II. This new drug was called lysergic acid diethylamide, commonly known as LSD or acid. The drug was first synthesized by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann while working for Sandoz Laboratories, which was and still is one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. However, Hofmann didn't realize LSD's psychedelic effects until 1943, 5 years later, when he accidentally ingested an unknown quantity of LSD. He described it as, "In a dreamlike state, with eyes closed, I found the daylight to be unpleasantly glaring. I perceived an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures, extraordinary shapes with intense kaleidoscopic play of colors." Naturally, when the Cold War began, the Central Intelligence Agency became intrigued with LSD for its potential use in espionage, interrogation, and mind control. They feared that the Soviets were going to get their hands on LSD and start dosing everybody, so they aimed to monopolize the world's supply of this still new drug. Reportedly, the CIA started experimenting with LSD after purchasing every available drop of LSD at the time for an amount of $240,000, which is equivalent to about $2.5 million today. Lysergic acid diethylamide would eventually become one of the most crucial components of the MKUltra program. One of the operations intended to test LSD on unsuspecting citizens was Operation Midnight Climax. This sub-program of MKUltra began in 1954 and was devised by the aforementioned head of the program, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, along with Dr. Robert Lashbrook, a CIA chemist who worked with LSD. They were the masterminds behind the operation, but the individual who executed it was Colonel George Hunter White, a larger-than-life Federal Bureau of Narcotics agent who, in addition to his narcotics role, served as a CIA consultant under the alias Morgan Hall. Here's how Operation Midnight Climax worked. Sidney Gottlieb and Robert Lashbrook approached George Hunter White with a plan to establish brothels in certain CIA-operated safe houses across the country in order to hire prostitutes to lure unsuspecting clients to these locations. Once there, the prostitutes would secretly administer LSD to the unwitting victims, typically by spiking their drinks. Once the drug took effect, George Hunter White, concealed behind a two-way mirror, would observe and document the subject's behavior. In almost all instances, the drugged individuals would engage in sexual activity with the prostitutes, allowing the CIA to study the effects of LSD on the mind during intercourse. The main objective was to determine whether some combination of LSD and sex could sufficiently weaken the mind to enable manipulation, potentially leading individuals to disclose secrets they would otherwise keep hidden. The first one of these brothels was set up by White under his alias Morgan Hall in New York City in a rented house at 81 Bedford Street in Greenwich Village. However, the main part of the operation soon moved to San Francisco, where White set up a brothel in an apartment on Telegraph Hill at 225C Chestnut Street. According to Leo Jones, a friend of White's who owned the company that installed the bugging equipment for the apartment, the operation was a collaboration between the CIA and the Bureau of Narcotics. Jones described the type of equipment he installed and what the rooms looked like. It was an L-shaped apartment with a beautiful view of San Francisco Bay, modeled after the 1955 Playboy magazine. It had pictures of French can-can dancers on the walls, as well as red bedroom curtains. The equipment included 4 DD4 microphones disguised as wall outlets. These were hooked up to 2 Model F301 tape recorders and were monitored by agents in a listening post adjacent to the apartment, separated by a 2-way mirror. Jones also added that White requested a portable toilet for the observation post, so he didn't have to move out of his position, as well as a refrigerator where White kept chilled martinis which he consumed during the experiments. The results of these covert observations would then be reported to Gottlieb and Lashbrook, who occasionally visited the San Francisco brothel apartment to meet with White. Their visits served not only to collect data, but also to provide further funding for the operation. However, it suggested that Gottlieb's visits may have had a hidden agenda. American journalist and author Stephen Kinzer, who extensively covered Sidney Gottlieb's work in his book Poisoner-in-Chief, proposed that Gottlieb had a fixation on sex. Kinzer suggested that every time Gottlieb visited the San Francisco brothels, he requested to engage with some of the prostitutes. Kinzer speculated that it could have been a means for this middle-aged individual to exploit the CIA's budget and the lack of supervision to indulge in personal pleasures. Regardless of the motive, Operation Midnight Climax proceeded smoothly until 1963, when the operation, along with the broader MKUltra program, encountered problems when a staffer in the Office of CIA's Inspector General, John Ehrman, stumbled upon them while auditing the CIA's Technical Services Division. The Inspector General was deeply troubled by the unethical practice of administering hallucinogens to unsuspecting individuals. Furthermore, the investigation revealed that some test subjects had experienced prolonged illness, lasting hours or even days, with at least one requiring hospitalization. Consequently, as a result of the Inspector General's investigation, the CIA scaled back on its drug testing program, shutting down the San Francisco and New York brothels in 1965 and 1966. However, the CIA reportedly continued drug experiments until 1967 on what they described as voluntary subjects, including prisoners at various correctional institutions. Ultimately, in 1967, all projects involving behavior-influencing drugs were terminated. Nevertheless, the operation and the broader MKUltra program remained concealed from the public for another decade. In fact, the program was so top secret that only a select few high-ranking government and CIA officials were even aware of Sidney Gottlieb's existence. The Pandora's box was opened in 1974 when a New York Times journalist, Seymour Hersh, published a story exposing CIA's illegal spying and non-consensual drug experiments on US citizens. This revelation prompted investigations led by the United States Congress in the form of the Church Committee and a commission known as the Rockefeller Commission. These were the first attempts to delve into the depths of Operation Midnight Climax and MKUltra as the central program.
Does this pistol fire the dart?
Yes, it does.
When it fires silently?
Almost silently, yes.
The Commission's report unveiled the CIA's involvement in illegal experiments on US citizens, along with illegal wiretapping and surveillance. All of this eventually led to the unraveling of Project MKUltra in 1977. That year, Senator Edward Kennedy conducted congressional hearings to investigate MKUltra, questioning former CIA employees about the program's outcomes, oversight, and continuation. Additionally, several CIA Freedom of Information Act requests unearthed a trove of documents related to the clandestine program. The exposure of the project and the subsequent public outrage resulted in 4 subpoenas, including 2 for Sidney Gottlieb and Robert Lashbrook. However, when the hearing dates arrived, all 4 subpoenaed individuals opted not to testify. Furthermore, a few years earlier, in 1973, amid the Watergate scandal, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of most paper records related to the MKULTRA, Midnight Climax, and their findings. This, along with the fact that during the trials, many agents claimed they could not remember details about the operations, ultimately led to little to no action taken against CIA. Even to this day, Operation Midnight Climax, along with its parent project MKULTRA, hasn't been fully unraveled. Both of them serve as a stark reminder of the ethical and legal boundaries that can be crossed in the pursuit of national security objectives. They highlight the importance of a robust system of checks and balances in every part of society and serve as a warning of what can happen when a subject is excluded from it. Unchecked bodies will lead to unchecked power, which tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.